If you're looking to build a multi-unit pizza empire, then you must have a commissary. And Juan Robles from Triple Beam is going to show you the way. Okay, so I have you on the show. Thank you for being on, and really I am fascinated with just the hour and a half maybe that we've been talking. Where we're at is Triple Beam, Glendora. I'm with Juan Robles. What is the commissary model in your definition?
The idea of a commissary-driven location is you can do all your sauces, your dressings, doughs, breads if you're going to be doing parbakes. If you do everything at that one location, you're feeding, it's the central hub for all of your locations.
Right.
So what ends up happening is that instead of you going into each restaurant as a chef and having to make sure that you taste every sauce, every dressing, every vinaigrette, every sausage blend that you do, and you have to sear a little piece of it, you know that you're good, because as long as you audit your commissary the right way, everything arrives to the locations consistent. So if it all comes out of one pot or out of one batch, you know that it's going to be the same throughout. That's what the commissary and the gist goes. I'm sure we're going to go into detail more, but the gist of it is to alleviate inconsistencies and concerns at the restaurant level.
So I love that idea. I'm all about streamlining the process. I'm all about consistency. I am a little sad that there's a little less sausage tasting.
Hey, dude, tell that to my stomach, dude.
No, for real though. If you just have to taste something once versus jumping around from store to store 5 times, I'm sure, as we'll get to talking, you'll talk about how the restaurants do some of their stuff in-house. So there's still some tasting there, but at least the main thing, which is the dough, the sauces, right? You can control that. Let's go ahead and show the audience what we're working with in this commissary, specifically the dough area, because that's what I think folks really want to understand about, not just Pizza Romana, but just the process of where everything sort of gets built and then how it journeys along, or the places that the dough goes.
Absolutely, man.
Let's go where it starts. Let's do it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just as a quick intro, Juan Robles is a culinary professional with decades of kitchen experience. When he joined the Triple Beam Company, founded by Nancy Silverton and Matt Molina, legends, it had only 2 locations. Leveraging Juan's expertise in commissary operations, he played a crucial role in scaling the company to 5 locations. Through this efficient model, Triple Beam supported its growth while generating up to $50,000 per week per location. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. From a kid who grew up in the ghetto to doing everything he could in the kitchen to find a way out and raise a better life for his family. Super impressive stuff. I assume that the day kind of starts here?
Yes.
For the most part?
So because going back to the whole point of making sure that your dough gets produced in a time where it's ready to go by the time the guys are ready to utilize it.
Yeah.
We make this very early in the morning. That way we can get it not only out of the way, but also to make sure that it gets a proper fermentation, which is 36 hours. So if we make it let's say we typically start at 5 in the morning and we're done by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning. If we utilize that time frame, you're talking about not the following day, but the day after. Around 5 a.m. is when they start coming in. They'll start weighing and shaping the batards to be able to let them rest and proof so we can make our pane biancos. So the way it ends up working is we work on a formula. When you work at a commissary, you want to make sure, again, going back to consistencies, that you're always making sure that the temperature of the dough coming out of the bowl is always the same, or as close to the same as possible. Some people will utilize the walk-in to keep their flour cold, so they know to count it at the same temperature every single time right off the bat. It could be so many different ways. The way we do it, we have an ambient control commissary. I keep my flours on the floor. Why? Because let's say you go into a walk-in and you have your flour in there to use the next day. What happens when all of a sudden your walk-in doesn't work? the dough guy isn't going to know what to do. He's going to say, well, what do I do? He's going to just utilize it, and next thing you know, your temperatures are out of whack. So I'd rather go off of a realistic standpoint, which is ambient temperature, and creating a formula to be able to determine what temperature the water has to be so it comes out of the bowl at the right temperature.
Hence a ton of ice.
Exactly, which is why we have the ice machine here. We have all of our flour here to eliminate excess strain.
Yeah.
We have all of our bottoms down here, and then we have our water meter in the back that we can actually make sure that we hit the right temperature every time.
Oh, perfect.
You set the gallons, you set the volume, and you put the hook in here, and it just goes and does its own thing.
Oh, so do you even need ice?
We utilize ice just because in case that ever breaks, which it's happened once, we still utilize the formula to know what the temperature is. So all we have to do is make sure that we have the right amount of ice in the water to get the same amount. But if we put it somewhere else and that happens, it becomes more strenuous. So it's always planning for what could happen.
Got it.
Always play devil's advocate in a commissary.
Smart guy.
So when we come in, what we do is we check the temperature of the flours. We check the temperature of dairy, of water, everything coming in to determine how much ice or again temperature we need to put in. We start with our flour, we start with everything, and then we add the water and we start mixing. This mixer here can handle about a 400-pound batch, 450-pound. And that one can handle about a 300-pound batch.
Wow.
But the way we actually operate it is we do our pane bianco in here, which is non-vegan. And then we use this one to do our vegan dough. And then we have this big Hobart mixer over here that's, again, like the movie Casino, that's from the 1960s, that's impenetrable. And we use that one to do our gluten-free crusts.
Got it.
And now typically
no cross-contamination.
No cross-contamination.
So okay.
And then these two mixers are operating in the morning while this is working because there's gluten in the air. But that mixer actually doesn't get utilized until the nighttime, which is typically about 6 hours after all dough production is done to make sure that there's no more flour in the air.
That's very considerate.
To again, eliminate cross-contamination.
Wow.
So that's why we have
wow.
That's
See,
why we have them.
Like the thing I love about you is that you have so much care into the process. Like anybody could just be like, oh, we'll clean the mixer and make the non-vegan dough, no problem. But like, I don't know, what is it? Like you don't rise to the level of something, you fall to the, I'm gonna butcher it, but you fall to your preparation, right?
Yeah.
And like people will just mess things up without knowing. People will forget. And it's just like, why risk it?
Why risk it? Especially, again, going back to commissaries.
Right.
A commissary is something that you have the potential of caring for a lot of people and the potential of harming a lot of people. And if you, going back to the marinara, if your marinara isn't made properly, you have how many locations that you can affect. And that can be the demise of your business. Or it can impact it through social media, Yelp, all those things. So it's better to be over precautious than to be under, and then something to potentially happen.
Dude, we all go into food thinking, I want to feed people. The last thing we want is, I want to hurt somebody.
Exactly.
And then when you're talking about the type of scale that you do, I want to feed tons of people. And on the opposite end of that spectrum is like, I don't want to hurt a ton of people. Exactly. Oh my goodness.
You have to be very methodical. That's why you need to put systems in place to assure the safety of your customers. Is at the commissary level, you have more top dollar employees here, whether they come from fine dining, working in mass production, working for these facilities that produce food for Walmart and all that. They know systems. My ideology with people is there's two types of slow people. A slow person that's slow because that's their nature, and a slow person because they're lazy. A person that's slow by nature, you can utilize by putting them to do things like adhering to recipe weights. Oh yeah. Making sure that everything is done at the same step every single day in and day out. People like myself, I'm a go person. So you put me to be able to do more laborious things like making the marinara and giving me a big prep list, and use the people that are more patient for the things that matter, that are time sensitive and temperature sensitive.
Yes.
Doing logs, all of that stuff, because that's just as important as a person executing the product.
Just as important, just not for me.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. No harm, like nothing wrong. We highlighted the importance of that job, and like, good. That's great insight. Can you talk to us about like what you're using in terms of flour here?
Yeah, man. So because we're very high hydration right now, we're in almost at 100%.
Wow.
We need a lot of protein. We need a lot of gluten to be able to absorb that much water. So currently we're utilizing King Arthur special patent flour.
Okay.
And then we utilize, outside of flours, that's the only flour that we use for our pane biancos. All the other flours that we utilize are for our brookies that we use, our cookie doughs, our gluten-frees. For example, we use the Juice Dough's gluten-free flour for the gluten-free crusts. That's a white and brown rice based. But outside of anything, when it comes to the pane bianco, we use 100% King Arthur.
Got it. And that's a high protein flour.
Yeah. This one is a high protein special patent. It absorbs water very, very well. Again, it's very, very thirsty. If you're trying to do something like, let's say in New York at a 62% hydration or 65, you're gonna have to add a lot of water to be able to keep it at that. Yeah. So it's like anything that we've worked with, Juice Dough's Americano, with Juice Dough's Nuvola. We're working right now with a lot of different flours to see if maybe there is something that we can utilize that might give us a better end result than this one. But I mean, and overall, when you work with Romano-style pizza with high hydration, whether it's Alteglia, whether it's alla pala, what we do, or you even talk about thereof ciabatta, you need something that's very high protein.
So for the non-dough nerds who don't understand, like even though you're using a strong flour at 90+% hydration, how long is that mix? I imagine it takes a minute.
It takes a very good while, and it's multiple cycles, because naturally, like, let's talk about, like, we have extra virgin olive oil in our dough. If you introduce extra virgin or just oil in general too early in the mixing phase, olive oil has a very low boiling point. So what happens is when you're mixing the dough and you're creating that friction in the bowl, it can get way too hot and it's going to start to overproof way too quick. So we have a certain function to get the base ingredients in the mix, and then we'll do our salt, our olive oil, and then you start talking about the extra water. If you do, let's say, a 95% hydration dough, and you add all the water in one shot, it's just going to pool around all day long. You need to be able to add a certain amount and then in increments add the other amount. Now, the tricky part is being able to add all that water within the right time frame to be able to get done and mixed at the end time, so it also gets the right temperature at the end of the day.
And so you're not slowing down the rest of the production.
Exactly. So it's very tricky. It's not rocket science, but it has its very particular skill set.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So would you say that a 400-pound batch, more or less about an hour of mixing from start to finish? More?
No, I think let's say a 400-pound batch will take anywhere around 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
20 minutes, give or take, 20 to 25 minutes. But again, if you, rule of thumb, regardless of the batch size or regardless of the mixing time and all that stuff, if you're adhering by a formula, if you're going that route, it should be the same amount no matter what, because again, you're taking in consideration the temperatures of all your ingredients going in there. So it should all equate to the same amount, because again, the friction points. Now, when you're doing a 400-pound batch versus a 200-pound batch, naturally that friction is going to happen a lot faster because more of that olive oil is exposed to the edge of the bowl. So, but the changes and the interval times are very minute, because again, you have to check the temperature. It's what I tell people all the time, especially everyone in general, is with dough, people forget that it's a living organism. It's no matter if you utilize the same ingredients from the same brand and the same temperatures, especially if you're working with fresh yeast, it can change.
All the time.
You can't tell yourself every hour I'm gonna check, because every hour it works that way. Sometimes it might be 30 minutes, it might be 40 minutes. It's understanding that you need to be, as a baker, not a cook, on top of the dough. The dough is what runs your shift. It's not the other way around.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. Let's. So once you're done mixing, it becomes this. I'm guessing you portion them into these bus tubs. If you're a pizza maker looking to make the best pizza, you need to be using the best cheese. And that's why today's video sponsor is Bacio Cheese. If you are not happy with your cheese needs, or if you're spending way too much on cheese, get some quality cheese from Bacio. It tastes delicious, and you'll be saving money because every pound of cheese that you get comes with a little reward at the end. Look up the Bacio Cheese Gold Club rewards. It'll be linked in the description below. Check it out, make your customers happier, and make your wallets happier. Now, back to the episode.
Yes, so the way it works is once we actually have our dough made, it'll go into these bus tubs, as you see here. This dough was just made about 3 hours ago.
3 hours ago?
4 hours ago.
Okay.
So this is our original batch that goes into here. Now we weighed in a very specific amount to each bus tub to make sure that they all proof at the same amount of time. That way we can keep consistency. Again, it's not just formulas. Every step of the way, you need to be consistent with how you batch it. If I fill it half the way up versus here where it's maybe about a quarter, by the time it proofs up, not only the proofing, it can either overproof and come out the bus tub, or what happens is if you have this much thickness in dough versus this, the core temperature is going to be more difficult to achieve when you have this much dough in it. So if you have the same amount and the same ambient temperature, you're going to know that all your dough is exactly the same. So you need to make sure that you're following everything with a fine-tooth comb and a ruler and a scale every step of the way.
Don't be cheap. Just buy more bus tubs.
Buy bus tubs. Buy bus tubs, not like cents.
Okay, so do you have, this was just made this morning.
Correct.
Is that one something that's been chilling for a few days?
So this one here is actually our vegan dough.
Our vegan dough, okay.
We have two types. We have a regular dough, which has milk in it. And because of the sugars, it gives you a different consistency. And this is our vegan dough. And if you notice, it's almost exactly the same. It's a little bit more elastic. And the reason being is, what's heavier, milk or water? Milk. So because it's all water-based, it actually expands and it proofs a lot faster, and it can give you a lot more height because it doesn't have so much weight on it.
Gotcha.
But the positive is, for peeps that don't know so much about the science behind it, is yeast is lactobacilli. What happens with lactobacilli? Lactobacilli eats sugar, and then when it eats the sugar, for lack of better terms, it creates farts. The farts is the fermentation process.
Right.
So when you smell the fermentation, that's actually the lactobacilli after consuming the sugars. Whether you introduce the sugar raw, which you typically don't in pizza dough, but how do you introduce the sugar? In the flour, in the proteins. And let's say someone that adds whole wheat flour into it. There's a lot of sugar in whole wheat flour, let alone if you use cracked whole wheat flour. If you want to give your dough a longer shelf life in the walk-in, you give it more food to sustain itself for a longer period of time. If you got cracked whole wheat, lactobacilli needs to work to the core where there's still sugar there, so it continues to feed to keep growing the product. And if the product is, if there's no sugar, the yeast dies. And what happens to that cracked whole wheat? It turns black because there's no more sugar in it.
Right.
Now, when you start talking about like dough again, lactobacilli consumes sugar, it creates fermentation, and that's how you get all of that going. So that's pretty much what you're trying to create when it comes to this type of dough, is you have so much water and it has less weight for it to move around and be able to give you that fermentation. And when it comes to the sugars in the milk, that's what gives our regular pane bianco its flavor, because it has all that natural sugar in the whole fat milk.
So how do you build flavor with the vegan dough then?
Through fermentation.
Through fermentation.
That one gets a little bit more time. That one gets a 2-hour fermentation process.
Got it.
I mean, a 2-day.
2-day
fermentation process.
Okay, good to know. And so by the time these are done in their bus tubs, the crew the following day will start to break them down. And
once the dough is ready to utilize, which is the second day after it gets produced, They'll come in early in the morning. They weigh them out. They make the batards. They'll put them on trays. They let them proof, and after that, they'll start doing the actual the ala pala stretch. We'll put them on peels. We'll accordion them, and we'll put them in our Poland ovens, and we'll bake them off, which end up coming out to 36-inch by 10-inch wide crusts.
Wow. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at those parbakes.
Totally.
Thank you for showing me that.
No problem, dude. No problem at all.
Tell me about what we got over here.
All right, so this is our ala pala. The way they come out of the oven is exactly like this whole piece. So essentially what we end up doing is when we're in mass production, we'll have a bunch of these peels out here. Boom, boom, boom. We'll go accordion on here, put a lot of olive oil, and all these 4 ovens are cranking.
Olive oil on top, yeah?
Yep, olive oil on top, and you go and you crank, boom, 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 boom. These are constantly going. Once they're baking out, typically by the time you load the 4th one in, the first one's ready to come out.
How quick is that?
That typically takes about total lapse time, like about 5 to 6 minutes.
5 to 6 minutes?
It doesn't take really that long. It's a
Damn.
pretty quick bake time because we're also baking at like 550 degrees.
Okay, I'm a little confused though. Like this peel looks longer than that, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the way it works on here is when you get the dough, you stretch them out on the boards, you pick them up and you dust off all the excess flour and you accordion it here. That way when you're loading it into that oven, for example, you're here, you're dropping it and you go almost like a baguette technique.
Got it. Okay.
So it's a baguette technique, and and then when you're laying it out, you're going boom, 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 and
then
essentially
becomes
you
this
lay it
length.
out to be that length. It's a very particular technique.
Dude, that seems hard.
Yeah. So then once it comes out, you dust them off. You cut them up. Now the way
Wait, say that again. Dust them off how?
we dust them off. Well, they come in intact like this, right? You have all the semolina and everything. You have to dust them off. Then you cut them up and you put them on trays to let them cool down. Now, essentially for triple beam, these are 2 whole pizzas.
Got it. 10 by 18, you said?
Yep, 18 by 10, and then you'll have your half or your quarter.
So customers have 3 choices. They can either get a full one, a half, or a quarter.
Correct.
Sorry, half or a quarter. Got it. Okay.
Yep.
What's your most popular, out of curiosity?
Ooh, pepperoni's always king. You know,
What about-
pepperoni's always king.
What about size?
So more popular cut sizes are halves.
Okay.
A close second, it's our quarters.
Yeah.
Then followed by our wholes, just because people like to try all the different flavors that we have to offer.
It's the nature of the style.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Being able to try all these different lovely creations that you got in your beautiful head.
Yeah, man, it's awesome when you see 2 to 3 boxes of half pizzas going out or quarters thereof, and just seeing all the different color contrasts and everything. It's nice. They almost look like boxes of candy, dude. It's awesome.
Yeah, so, okay, so walk me through, like, I'm in the restaurant, right? It's, I'm getting this beautiful piece of bread. If someone orders a quarter, am I just like cutting it there and then building it?
So at the restaurant level, once the orders are once the cooks have the bread, we'll get some crusts ahead of time that are pre-cut in halves or quarters, and some in holes and bus tubs to prevent them from getting dried out. And based on what we need, we'll just open that up and we'll knock it out. Now, let's say you're on a Friday night and you're really busy. Instead of, if you know you're gonna sell a bunch of pepperoni pizzas, why not just, and you get a quarter, why not just make the whole and you eliminate the issue of being able to make another one? Because all you're doing is going through the same motions, repetitive times, and you're using up more labor.
It's about the same speed to dress one whole pizza than it is 1 quarter.
Correct.
And so rather than doing 4 quarters, just bang out 1 pizza.
Correct.
Now, how about this, half and halves? Are you building them, like let's say I want 2 halves and I want 1 pepperoni and 1 veg. Are you building it on the same pie, or are you cutting off this piece and then building them separate?
2 different halves. Because you never know if there's a customer that might be allergic to something on this one versus that one, or if maybe, let's say, they request a vegetarian-based one and one that's meat. You don't. They won't know, but I will. We will, and that's something that I'm not cool with, because I have family that's in that zone, that spectrum as well. So we do everything separate. And also, in addition to, when a guest orders something, they can also request for it to be in a separate box if it's that intense of a situation.
Got it. So I can't be like, yo, let me get a half size, but I want half this, half that. No, you're stuck getting 2 quarters and you're paying the extra 50 cents.
Well, yes. I
Yes.
mean, yeah.
Yeah, at the end of the day. Cool. That's how it should be.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, when you look at it from a logistical standpoint, you're gonna do more work in cutting each one, making each one individually, especially when it's slow. You need to make sure that you're also covering your ground as well.
Yeah.
There needs to be a good median
Right.
to make sure that you're not overcharging, but that you're covering your ground as well.
Plus, I mean, you're someone who like looks at a pizza and says, does it look good, smell good, and taste good? And whenever you do half and half pizzas, you always have that awkward blend in the middle, and they just don't look as nice.
Those are the 3 wows, man.
Basically, what do we have here?
All right, so we're gonna make 4 of our most popular pizzas. The first 2 that we're gonna make is gonna be our potato and sage pizza, followed by our mushroom and shallot. So for us, what we do is we utilize brushes to be able to spread our sauce, whether it's marinara or cream. Simply because of all the bubbles that we have on our crust, we wanna make sure that we get every little crevice.
Yeah.
On these pizzas, you don't want to go too heavy on either type of sauce, because what ends up happening is if you put too much sauce, when you go through the conveyor oven, all the toppings can just slide right off of it. So you want to make sure that you give it a nice coat. One of the main reasons of adding sauce or oil or anything to a crust before you bake it into a pizza is that you need to put some type of protection on top of the crust.
Gotta lube it up.
So the heat doesn't, exactly. You gotta lube it up to make sure that the heat doesn't hit the crust or the dough directly, so it doesn't dry it out, and then it gives you the effect of a cracker. So what we're gonna do is after this, we're gonna add our 3 cheese blend. This is a combination of Funtal, shredded mozz, and truffle cheese. So we do our 3 cheese, our roasted mushrooms, which are roasted with a ton of olive oil, fresh oregano, thyme, rosemary, tons of garlic, salt, pepper.
Damn.
Making sure that it has a nice big abundance of mushrooms.
I think that's one thing we didn't even talk about was that these pizzas go through a conveyor belt oven by the time they're shipped over, right? And it's like that just again goes back to leveling the skill and difference for people, making
Totally.
it easy.
At the restaurant level, we do not utilize deck ovens, we utilize conveyor ovens. With conveyor ovens, you get a nice consistent bake. You set a timer and you forget about it. You don't have to worry about moving the pizzas around, making sure that you hit hot spots, all of that jazz. It's straight up just passing it through the conveyor, taking it out of the other side, and go, go, go.
Yeah.
So that's 3 cheese crema. It has fresh sage, a lot of roasted Yukon potato.
Sheesh. You guys don't go light, man.
Oh no, man! You have to be able to taste everything. You have to, and then especially with the type of crust that you have,
Right.
Some things take more or less to be able to breach through that barrier of being able to taste through the crust. And because our crust isn't thin, we need to make sure that those ingredients stand out. If not, how are you gonna? If you don't taste the potato, you're gonna be like, okay, what's going on? You know, it has to be nice and layered. After that, we'll do a little bit more 3 cheese.
If you had to guess, when you're R&Ding pizza, how many times do you have to make it before you lock it down? Because I imagine like you are the type of person to be like, that needs more potato, that needs less potato.
It takes a good amount of time. So for myself, I've been in this industry for a total of 23 years. When you work in fine dining, when you work in restaurants, what ends up happening when you first start at a restaurant? The chef was gonna demo one of each dish for you and say, this is how I want it to look, this is how it should taste it, and you train yourself to register that flavor and that look in your brain for the longevity of your tenure there, and thereof to register it when you need it in the future. So I've been able to create this ability where I could create ingredients and flavors in my head and then put them on paper, so to speak, and they come out pretty close. So there are ones that are more challenging than others, but for the most part, I would say I'll spend maybe a week or two for the most part on each pizza to make sure that it comes out just right. And again, because it's not only about hitting the right notes, it's about evaluating the pizza and making sure that it's executable from the weakest to the strongest link like we talked about earlier. It's making sure that all those points get met. So there might be times where I hit the right flavor, but I know that I need to bring it back a little bit to make sure that it fits that profile.
There's no right or wrong answer, but the final question is, what's good dough?
Good dough is a combination of skill and passion for making it. Because dough is a living organism, I'm one of those believers that vibes make an impact on it. So if you're giving off positive vibes in making your dough, not only just because you know how to make it, it enhances it, especially when that care and that love translates over into the actual making of the pizza, rather than it just being put into the dough itself. You have to love, it's that traditional saying that you have to love what you do. And if you do, you'll never work a day in your life. But it also translates into food. If you love what you do, it'll translate into the product. So to have good dough, it needs to be the combination of skill and passion.
If you want to learn more about Juan Robles of Triple Beam, I have a full hour-long podcast with him, talking more about the ins and outs of the Commissary Model and a little bit of his story. Check it out. It's available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It'll be linked in the description below. I appreciate you. I love you. Till next time, peace.